Arc 6, The Corridor of Memories. Chapter 12, The Watchtower's Baptism. In an instant, the throbbing and burning pains were all gone, and Natsuki Subaru returns. He wanted to praise himself for not screaming at the scene before him. After the second return had returned to the flower garden surrounded by the beasts again, he earnestly thought so, closing his mouth with hands in panic. Chichi-cha-chichi. In a place dominated by the violent scent of flowers, what could be heard was the sound of Meili clicking her tongue. Stealing the attention of the Oiran bear standing in front of the dragon carriage by shaking her fingers silently, and letting out this sound from her lips. Holding their breath, everyone was watching it. Just a few minutes ago, he watched the same scene. This was the second time he was brought back at this time. Are you kidding me? Subaru's brain starts spinning at a high speed while trying to get the picture of the events that happened to him. He needs to switch his focus immediately. He had to forget that just a moment ago, countless demon beasts chased after them, ending up in gore and bloodshed. But before that happens, he had to deal with what was in front of him. The problem in front of him, right before his eyes. He could hear something that sounded like calling a kitten. The actual situation was totally different than that, but that thought was hindered by the smell of flowers. Smelly, sweet, noisy, annoying, itchy, painful, hot, which one was the correct word to describe it? The more he thinks about it, the more it stresses his brain, but no concrete solutions come to mind. His brain cannot keep up with the discrepancy between the current situation and the situation that he had been experiencing up to now. Subaru desperately tries to adapt to now. He felt a little push against his chest. Looking down, it was Beatrice's small body leaning on his chest. As Subaru completely embraced her against his chest, she looked up slightly to show that he should be gripping the reins instead of her. Perhaps he caught her in the immediate shock after return by death. He remembered the last death, he remembered Beatrice's crying face and tears. HGH. That's right. This was the third time that Subaru had reached this situation. He died here twice. The first time he had no clue how he had died, but the second time, he could picture that death to some extent. But his suffering at the moment of death was not clear. Feeling like his internal organs were melted after simmering in a pot. That feeling. No, that should not be the priority. Now, the priority should be Chichi-cha-chi. Just as Subaru's thoughts caught up to his second death, Meili successfully drew the attention of the Oiran bear. Following the clicking of her tongue and movement of her fingers, the demon beast slowly diverted its gaze from the dragon carriage and was guided to the right-hand side. There would be no problem if the Oiran bear leaves just like this. However, Subaru knows that this won't be the case. Right next to the Oiran bear, who was moving away, stood an earth dragon. Gan's breathing was wild. The pressure of facing the demon beast so close and the scent of flowers that continues to spread violently. Two kinds of pressure torment the calmness of the earth dragon, which would make it snap abruptly. If the earth dragon makes a noise, the swarm of the agitated demon beasts will attack all at once. If so, it would result in nothing but a repetition of the previous two deaths. However, no one could notice the agitation of Gan, except for Subaru. Even Julius, who held the reins, also has attention unconsciously diverted from the earth dragon, concentrating on the threat of the monsters in front of them. Therefore, Subaru was the only one who could deal with it. But how to deal with it? He couldn't speak. It was impossible to quickly approach and touch it. There was a big risk in calling out to Julius and making him calm it down. Before that, if he couldn't make a decision right now, he wouldn't be able to make it in time. What should he do? Then, in the last seconds, Subaru closed his eyes. If he can't think of anything in this moment, he decided he would call up Julius. Reviving back into his brain, he recalled the last two deaths, the onslaught of demon beasts, and the light of the Watchtower. At the moment of the second death, he remembered that he was being held by Beatrice, who cried and said, "Don't leave me alone. Subaru, Biko, I love you. Betty." He hugged her small body from the back and whispered those words in her ear. Beatrice was surprised at the sudden expression of love, but the hand over her mouth didn't allow her to shout. Instead, Subaru extended his hand towards Gan at the front right corner. The hands which had gently caressed and wiped Beatrice's tears just before his death. Invisible providence. Though, as his mouth was too busy confessing his love with a whisper, the name of that technique was chanted only within his heart, unfortunately. Just then, in the center of Subaru's body, a different sensation from when the link with Beatrice drains his mana permeated from him. Something dark is summoned, arousing a silent cry. Summoned into this world by an unspoken shout, the unseen hand of Sloth comes forth to aid Natsuki Subaru in achieving his goals. The black hand that was created slowly manifested in this world from Subaru's chest. Of course, its existence cannot be seen by anyone except for Subaru. As he was embracing Beatrice, the unseen hands just went through her, and it seemed like they did not make any unintended contact. While admiring that fact, he could feel that something in him was being drained away each second. Whether it was his soul or sanity, Subaru does not know. However, he couldn't take too much time if he doesn't want to have to call up Julius. The black magic stretches out to Gan's neck, who seemed like he was about to roar at any moment. The palm slowly stroked his thick neck that was coated with thick scales. The big earth dragon trembled from being touched by someone, but somehow his instincts probably felt that there was no hostility in that touch. The earth dragon settles his rough breath and relaxes his body. Julius, huh? Then, as Julius also noticed Gan's reaction, he pulled the reins and calmed the earth dragon to his earnest. As expected from Julius, he skillfully handled the earth dragon, noticing its agitation, with what could have otherwise been devastating. Seeing that, Subaru immediately cut off the connection with the unseen hand. When the black palm is deprived of freedom, it dissipates in an instant, and disappears into the parched wind of the Sand Sea, as if nothing had happened. Wow. After dodging that bullet, Subaru took a long breath of relief. At the same time, he felt like a dark black cloud was stuck in his chest, and he wanted to vomit. Of course, things aren't so easy. That sense of loss is the price he paid for using the invisible providence, and it remains engraved in the soul. Thus, Subaru thinks about the feeling of loss being gouged in his chest. Invisible providence, the cost of using the unseen hand, the feeling of loss and breathlessness due to its influence, is clearly easier than before. The first time that Subaru used the invisible providence was when he had fought Garfield in Sanctuary. At that time, Subaru, who had unleashed his power in a feverish manner, was attacked by this sense of loss and drunkenness that made half of his body feel unstable. It gave him a feeling of disgust to think of the opponent who used that same power before Subaru, and it was no excuse that the incident happened after not being able to beat Garfield in the first place. It was a strange ability, rather, authority, that endlessly intrigued Subaru with the dangers of using it, as well as the circumstances that made it available to him. Therefore, he had never thought to actively use this force until now. Subaru's invisible providence has no power or flexibility like the original unseen hands of that madman. At best, wiping away tears or stroking the head is all he can muster. The cost is too expensive if he has to pay with his soul, but he thought the only means was to meet it halfway. Subaru, it's not like I've gotten used to it. Shaken with a feeling of loss and disgust, Subaru felt more anxiety than relief. It's always good to have more cards in your hands, is what Subaru theorizes. But it doesn't mean that possessing multiple peerless jokers and old maid would do you any good. Of course, it would serve as the best hand of cards in other games. Subaru, oha. Betty, just now, what have you been doing, I suppose? Subaru? What? As Subaru let out a small shriek amidst his worries, a grumpy voice suddenly appeared. It was like, if you were to open your eyes to see what's happening, you would see a face in front of you, as your eyes would meet Beatrice's eyes. And that Beatrice looked quite unusual. Subaru, Biko, what happened to your head and dress? Betty. It's the result of Subaru being glued to Betty's hair and clothes all the time. I wonder why I have to suffer such a humiliation. Subaru, me. In front of Subaru, who was tilting his head cluelessly, a furious Beatrice was trying to hide the anger in her voice. Her splendid drills were jumbled, and both the delicate dress and the white cloak to protect the dress from the sand wind were arranged eccentrically and running at the forefront of fashion. It is a state-of-the-art pattern that no one has ever thought of. Betty, your lack of self-awareness is irritating. You were very worried, I suppose, but then it went on and on and on and on and on. That's enough. Do you even remember saying those words of love? Subaru, no, I remember that. Biko, my love is true. Betty, HMP. To those candid words, a red-faced Beatrice completely covered her head with her cloak. He really wanted to admire that unfamiliar cute appearance, but right now he can't play with Beatrice. As a result of Subaru's unspeakable efforts, Gan will not make a fuss, and will try to resume the march of the dragon carriage with Meilei's ability. However, Subaru goes through the gap that opened between the Oiran bears, and brought Patrash close to the coach. Subaru, Julius, Meilei. Let's make a temporary retreat, things are bad. It was because of the two deaths that he proposed a rework in their strategy. Meilei, I'm disappointed in you, big brother. It was only a bit tense, I didn't want to run away so soon. Ram, after all, Barusu is still Barusu. I thought after becoming Amelia-sama's knight, he would be a little better. But I guess a person's character doesn't change that easily. Pulled out too early. Subaru, there's no harm in just reinforcing a safety measure. After somehow running back from the flower garden and returning to the meeting place which they set up after breaking through sand time, Subaru was being stabbed with strict criticism for making the decision to withdraw. First, it was Meilei who had successfully tamed the Oiran bears and opened the way towards the tower, and then the second was Ram, who had been stuck by the window in the dragon carriage, prepared for any emergency situation. Subaru, who stopped the dragon carriage and requested a face-to-face meeting on the sand, was shrinking as he was cornered about stopping their progress on just his own opinion. Emilia, but I don't think that Subaru's judgment was wrong. Even if we got really far through the flower gardens, I think that it's still the same situation as a little while ago. If we did that, you wouldn't have been able to get out like we did now. Meili, big sister doubts my ability? You believe big brother more than me. Emilia, we've come this far. I believe in both of them. But it is my opinion that I especially want to believe what Subaru says. Sorry. Subaru, She is Emilia, major goddess, who fights against Meili's childish rebuttals, and puts her heart into it. Subaru puts his hands together, and beside him, Beatrice fixed her messed up clothes and hair. Betty, so what do you intend to do after all? If you don't trust them, a beast girl, it is too reckless to pass through this flower garden. I suppose, even if I had to, I wouldn't have been able to annihilate the whole herd of this kind of beast, but that's not the case. Emilia, if only Puck was here, oh well. I guess I'll try my best. Subaru, I really want it to be the last resort. And even if you completely annihilate the Oiran bears here, I feel that other monsters will fill the gaps, and it will become an infinite loop. What do you say, Meili? Meili, who was by the water, pouts and turns her face away. The girl crouches down, putting her chin over her knees, like a little child. Meili, what is it? Subaru, from what we heard, it's unusual that the flower gardens would be a territory for only Oiran bears. To put it bluntly, even if the bears aren't around, other demon beasts will fill their places. Meili, it may be right, or it may be not right. Subaru, which is it? Meili, yeah, what Big Brother said is right. But what are you gonna do? While affirming Subaru's point of view, Meili questions him back. Receiving her dissatisfied look, Subaru frowns, and Julius shrugs his shoulders. Julius, I understand Miss Meili's point. Subaru's worries are justified, but there is nothing to be gained just by fretting over unexpected situations. If we could predict what would happen and deal with it, we wouldn't call it unexpected. Subaru, even so, just leaving it all in the hands of divine protection and rushing in without thinking, is a different story. Or maybe I should say, that proposal would be very out of your character. That's more like Garfield's role. Julius, naturally, I would never suggest such recklessness. We should decide what to do after a constructive discussion. Whether we proceed or return, that is. Just like before entering the flower gardens, Julius said this, raising his 2 fingers. As Subaru snorted at the gesture, everyone started to think about the situation. Ram, what if Barusu acted as a decoy to lure out the demon beasts? Then while they chase after him, we find a gap for us to break through. Subaru, united we stay. Ram and the others will be safe, and we can set out to cure REM. It's a good idea. Subaru, I'll be devoured. Emilia, still, I'll work really hard to fight for everyone and such. Subaru, Emilia-tan, this is an unexpectedly meat-headed reaction. Emilia, meat-headed, huh, what are you saying suddenly? It's embarrassing. Subaru, it's sudden for me. This doesn't match the unconditionally praising Emilia-tan? Julius, leave it to Miss Meili's divine protection, and we will advance through the flower garden until the point we can. When we have reached the limit, we will launch a preemptive attack and rush to the Watchtower. It's a powerful gamble. Subaru, I can't explain it, but it will fail. I can't explain it, but I'm sure. Julius, You say this as if you have an absolutely certain basis. Subaru, I don't know. I can't say that for sure. It is tough to dismiss the progression strategy without touching on the forbidden subject of return by death. And in the discussion that seemed somewhat lacking in progress in terms of the strategy, Subaru tried his luck with what he had noticed. Because he had to prioritize Gan's shock, then afterward the retreat from the flower gardens, he forgot to sort out the cause of those 2 deaths which actually got him back in the first place. The first time it was too sudden, and the second time it was a mess, and he couldn't say very clearly, but the cause of both of Subaru's deaths was related to the fact that the tower in front was glowing. Subaru, that tower glows, is there anyone else seen that? The Watchtower glows. At Subaru's question, everyone tilted their heads with surprised faces. Subaru groaned at the poor response and that no one saw it. It's kind of obvious. Honestly, Subaru saw that light at approximately the same time of his death. If that light really had a killing intention, then those who saw it would not live to tell the tale. The secret attack that was carried out to kill him, he should think about that sounds really better to me. Anastasia, Natsuki-kun, you saw the tower glowing? Subaru, what? I might be mistaken, but I think it might have lightened up. Anastasia, when did that happen? Subaru, when I was in the flower garden, I think. He replied to Anastasia's inquiry in the form of another question. However, because there was a situation in the flower garden where he could not raise his voice, it didn't seem suspicious that he had kept quiet about the tower's light. Since Subaru saw the tower's light both times around when he activated Return by Death, it could also be risky to touch the subject in this case. For a second, he feels sorry that he can only report the truth in irregular bits. Subaru, if the tower lights up, doesn't that mean the sage in the tower-san was watching us? Anastasia, not necessarily, it's nighttime too, it wouldn't be strange to use a light. Emilia, I see. If the sage noticed us, it may be a good idea to let him know that we don't mean any harm. Except, since Subaru was so ambiguous about his argument, Emilia's thoughts went in a completely different direction. Of course, it is a journey to seek friendly contact. If the cause of the light is the sage, it is natural that such an opinion arises. But to Subaru, who knows the light is anything but friendly, this would be the same as running towards a cliff. Subaru, wait, let's try to sort out our information for now. And then let's decide whether or not to get in touch with the sage. Emilia, sort out our information? Subaru, yeah, organize. Because, it's all there. That light is not necessarily a sign of life from the sage. It's more, there's a possibility of it being a dangerous searchlight like light, isn't there? Emilia, search, light. Anastasia, in other words, Natsuki-kun suspects that the light he saw is from a defense mechanism that the sage has planted? Subaru, that's it. While Emilia is in her head trying to figure out a word that she wasn't used to hearing, Anastasia/Scarf Dona gets to the true meaning of Subaru's words. And hearing that and pondering is Julius. The knight murmurs, is that so, under his breath. Julius, I don't know whether the sage has been alive for hundreds of years, or if it's only exaggeration. Might there be some legacy left behind by the sage that still works as a device to protect the world? Subaru, oh. I didn't think so far ahead, but it's possible. Julius, if that's the case, it would assume for convenience that everyone approaching is one who schemes to resurrect the Witch of Envy, even royal messengers from the kingdom. It has been a long-standing mystery as to why the sages, who were supposed to be friendly to the kingdom, would be as violent as stories told. In Julius's words, it sounded like he was somewhat relieved, and Subaru admired that. So there's also this way of thinking? Indeed, if the defense system was prepared and left behind by the sages, even after the death of its master, it would still refuse intruders. It is not so strange for such a system to exist in a magical world. Subaru, if that's the case, I want you to give me a break because this trip will be a waste. Ram, if the sage is dead, but there is any information or documents left by the sage, it would be good too. It's still too early to leave the world in despair, Barosu. Subaru, I'm not gonna let Nesama's bullying manner get to my head. If Julius's speculations are correct, the whole foundation of this journey will be undermined. But even against such a possibility, Ram's determination does not shake. As one would expect. Anastasia, in any case, to keep watch for hundreds of years without rest. Although in no way realistic, I don't know if it's even possible. Besides, I don't think there's such a need to be disappointed about whether the sage Shala is dead or alive. Emilia, really? Why? Anastasia, if you are a long-lived species, it's not particularly surprising to be alive even now. Echidna's birth itself was hundreds of years ago. Pulling out the white scarf from inside her robe, Anastasia laughs. In response to that, Emilia immediately touched her pendant, thinking of Puck. Emilia, oh, my Puck also lives a long time. I'm not losing to that echidna. Subaru, why are you competing, Emilia-tan? Well, my Biko is quite a lowly granny too. Right. Betty, do you think Betty will just laugh and answer that, I suppose? Disgusting. As Beatrice sneers with anger, Subaru shrugs. When the conversation diverted from the subject, Ram claps her hands. Ram, the sage being dead or alive is not relevant to the discussion. Leaving that aside, the problem is the true identity of the light that Barosu saw. Whether that is dangerous, or just the illusion of Barosu's, we have to reach a conclusion. Subaru, sooner or later, it won't be very doubtful whether the contents of my report are true or false, to all of us. Ram, it's not about deciding if it's a lie or not, Ram will concede on this matter. It might be that, if they don't reach a general agreement, there won't be any progress. In any case, the discussion ends up returning to the subject of the true identity of the light. Subaru, I think it's dangerous. At least not friendly. Julius, and the basis is just intuition? Subaru, well, that's right. Julius, right. That's troublesome. The light of the Watchtower. Subaru was convinced that it was the cause of both of his deaths, but it is very difficult to convey that fact. So, he thought it would be impossible to use intuition as his reason, but surprisingly, Ram seriously considered the reply. And not only Ram but Amelia and Julius too. Subaru? Just on my intuition? Aren't you more suspicious? Amelia, if this was just a hunch, I think so, but it is Subaru's intuition, right? In that case, it makes more sense to think about it than to doubt it suddenly. Julius, don't be so self-deprecating. You've been through this kind of hopeless situation already, haven't you? There is a certain kind of intuition that only works for such a person. To put it in other words, it's sort of a rule of thumb, it's by no means something to make light of. Ram, like when field mice change their territory before heavy rain. Barusu's intuition can't be fooled. Subaru, it's just stupid enough, is that what you're saying? Like a reflex reaction to the poisonous remarks thrown his way, Subaru's shoulders relaxed a little. Not being able to reveal the source of his information, even to those close to him, is an absurd reality. Subaru had come across the same situation many times, but each time he was saved by the concern and trust of others, in the same way, over and over again. REM in the royal capital. Otto and Ram in sanctuary. Amelia and Beatrice in the city of Pristella. They all believed in Subaru, in what he was. And so, Subaru, even if you want to call them out friendly, there's no way to do it. If you even make a loud voice, Bear-san will come to welcome you before the sage does. Julius, that is something I want to avoid. Then, the realistic means should be sending Amelia-sama's magic. Or so it seems. While looking towards the watchtower, Julius stretches his right hand and closes one of his eyes. It's a gesture like a painter trying to figure out a distance. Then staying like that, silently thinking for a moment. Julius, roughly, from here to the watchtower is around 10 kilometers from the front of the flower garden. It is not a realistic range to cast Amelia-sama's magic. Subaru, by the way, how far can you cast your magic, Amelia-tan? Amelia, the distance? Well, I haven't tried to measure it before, so I don't know, but I don't think it can reach the tower from here. It will disappear before it hits. The silhouette of the watchtower from this point is clearly closer than the silhouette that was visible before the sand time. In fact, closer than they were after crossing the distance of the flower gardens. Even so, the plan to aim at the tower from the front of the flower gardens was not realistic. Subaru, in the first place, if you could pass just by sending a message, Reinhard would be able to do it. Being that guy, it's like, couldn't he make a magical attack that could cover the distance way beyond 10 kilometers? Julius, there is no way of knowing that, except asking him. Reinhard probably didn't pass through Sandtime Point when he challenged this trial. Until now, we've only reached so far because our Miss Anastasia, no, because Echidna knew the way. Subaru, is that so? Ah shit. Don't you know anything more? As the proposal is rejected, Subaru points to Scarf Dona with a melancholic voice. Then, playing her part as Anastasia, Scarf Dona appears skillfully handling the muffler concealing her state. Anastasia, I don't know what to say. There was a road to go on the other side of Sandtime, and it was an unprecedented achievement just to be able to claim so. Shouldn't you give me more credit? Subaru, we're the first to get here, is that it? Knowing only half the way off memory, like you are giving directions to the newspaper stand. That's a tough job. Anastasia, you have a point. Subaru spouted a rude theory, but Scarf Dona didn't try to refute it. The scarf fell silent, and that pondering attitude also passed on to Anastasia. Then, Anastasia raised her face suddenly. Anastasia, that's right. But now, it seems it's better to sum up the things we know at the moment. Subaru, the things we know so. Anastasia, Natsuki-Koen's light of the tower, as well as the supposed danger of it, the extent of the demon beast's flower gardens in front of the tower, the 3 Sandtimes, and... Is there something else? The information that Anastasia listed had all been established so far. It is important to build a path and pave the way to a conclusion. Subaru folds his arms and recalls the journey so far and the dangers he saw for a while. Subaru, now, this is the place that we came to after choosing to cross the Sandtime of the night. Then, it became too much of a burden on the dragons to pass through that flower field. And then, it seems Meili kept silent that she was bringing a monster along with us. Meili, huh? Subaru says while counting on his fingers, and Meili's shoulders raise up in a panic. At seeing the blatant reaction of the small girl, everyone's eyes turn to her. Meili, wait. Yes, Big Brother is right, but how does Big Brother know that? Subaru, guesswork. It was just a leading question. Julius, still, it seems that Subaru's imagination was right. What will you do? Julius, in a quiet voice, asks about the procedure for Meili's betrayal. Hearing that attitude, Meili's face turned pale, but Subaru didn't want to make matters worse. Stopping Julius with his hand and fixing his eyes on Meili. Subaru, don't worry. I'm not talking about scolding her. I understand it's just your insurance. Still, it was just a suspicious factor. Meili, do you want me to let it go? Then, you won't be angry? Subaru, there's no need to let it go. If you think you need one, please keep it. If we're surrounded by a group of Oiran bears, or chased, it would be a great help. Meili. Thinking he must be joking, Meili widened her eyes and just nodded. Just to be sure, Subaru looks back at Julius, who has yet to loosen his vigilant eyes. Subaru, that's what children do. Let's give her a pass. Julius, if it is a child that can only be handled properly, I also do so with my full power. However, the girl's power is too strong to simply trust and let her go. Even more so in the land of Augria, which can be said to be the garden of demon beasts. Subaru, even so. We're all sharing the same dragon carriage, so please get along. When Subaru says so, Julius hesitates a bit and then stops going for his sword. Then, instead of the silent Julius, Emilia raised her hand. Emilia, so, Subaru. Let's continue the talk from earlier. Subaru, yes. I'll go on. Emilia, when it comes to passing through the flower gardens, what do you plan to do? Do you want to try the same thing with another sandtime and try out a different place? Subaru, on the other hand, though. Just a second, there's something I'd like to try. Emilia, something you want to try? Emilia, who had no idea what Subaru was thinking, tilted her head in confusion. Copying Emilia's tilted head, Subaru turned his eyes toward the flower gardens, the sea of flowers surrounding the Watchtower. Of course, he couldn't see the end of it. Subaru, if the flower garden has an opening somewhere, at least we won't have to worry about being targeted from all sides. Whether there is an edge like that or not, it's worth a try, right? And so, their plan had all the participants going to check for the existence of any edge on the flower gardens. Julius, if moving in separate groups, getting lost would be devastating. Besides, it won't be sensible to advance in the immediate vicinity of monsters without Miss Meili's assistance. Julius's point gained everyone's unanimous approval. Subaru also agreed on this and decided to give priority to safety rather than convenience alone. Subaru, well, I'd like to start departing soon, but... Everyone prepares to depart, getting on their respective dragon carriage or earth dragon. If they make the rule to always keep the Watchtower's silhouette on their right side, the party can make sure they are following north. However, whether the rules of east, west, north, and south still work in the dunes is a different story. Subaru, when you calmly think about it, this whole place is also a strange case of spacetime distortion. If by going through the sandtime you arrive here, it's somewhat similar to door crossing. Betty, I don't know what Subaru is trying to say. The application of door crossing surely distorts space, and makes the physical distance vague, I suppose. Betty set up Subaru into it once too. Subaru, you did to me? When? Betty, I'll never forget it, on our first encounter, I suppose. Subaru, first encounter, oh. In Roswell's mansion, when I cleared the corridor that seemed to be an infinite loop. I'm sorry about that. Even though you prepared it so hard, I'll do my best not to do something like that again. Sorry? Betty, you seriously apologizing for it is seriously frustrating. Forget it, I suppose. Subaru, you reminded me. Betty, TCH-. That's it. Riding with him, Beatrice was getting somewhat angry. Subaru had no choice but to take on the difficult task of handling the peculiar girl. For the time being, he held her in his arms and calmed her down, commanded Patrash to walk towards the dragon carriage, and then... Subaru, are you ready there? Julius, without a problem. After that, Emilia-sama would like to do one thing. Emilia, that's right. Nodding to Julius, who had finished his preparations on the carriage's coach, Subaru looked up at the roof. As in their march into the flower garden, Emilia's position is still fixed on the roof of the dragon carriage. Subaru raised his hand to Emilia, who seemed enthusiastic while standing high, and asked her to create a landmark just like earlier. Subaru, Emilia-tan, please here. For the time being, this is our base camp. Be as quiet as possible, without disturbing the demon beasts. Emilia, okay, understood. If I wake up a demon beast with this, all the trouble we went to being all quiet back then would be meaningless, right? So quiet ly. Subaru slowly moves his hand gesturing to go slowly, and Emilia mimics it while before their eyes, a tower of ice rises up from the sand floor. It seemed like they were right in their judgment that it would proceed quietly. In fact, the ice tower was built slowly and gently, and he could not hear the usual sound of tensing in the air. A few parts came out looking a bit weak, but it had a fine finish, and seemed to be able to fulfill its role safely. Emilia, is it okay? Subaru, okay. No problems. As expected, Emilia-tan. Giving the anxious Emilia a big O&K, Subaru peeks in the direction of the flower beds. There were concerns over if the demon beasts would be able to sense mana activity, but fortunately, there was no signs of any movement other than the sweet scent of nectar flowing from the flower gardens. Actually, it seemed quite dull. Subaru, even now I wonder why they pretend to be a flower garden. If they want to camouflage themselves, don't you think a desert is a strange place to do it? Betty, demon beasts aren't expected to have that much intelligence, I suppose. They're simple, can't do anything except what is carved into their instincts, and they think of nothing else. Animals are just like this, I suppose. Subaru, I see. Very interesting. Beatrice's makes a bitter evaluation at his bosom. Nodding at those words, Subaru diverted his gaze to the flower garden and aimed to give the order to their departure, and he noticed. At the edge of his field of vision that looked towards the flower garden, a change took place. Something was different in the flower garden. The watchtower glowed. Subaru, Emilia. Emilia. This time Subaru raised his voice and called out to Emilia on the roof. Hearing the urgency in his voice, Emilia held on tight to her position. But the effect of light exceeded it. Hook. Making a violent sharp sound, something hits the ice tower and smashes it to pieces. The ice tower, which was long, thin and about 10 meters tall, was nothing but fragile. However, as if destroying a sand castle, the attack broke the ice with ease and reduced it to mana. Again, he couldn't see it. But he understood. Subaru, I knew that light would attack. Betty, Subaru. Next one is coming. While his body is bathed in crushed ice fragments, Subaru turns his neck to Beatrice's call. Immediately after that, the watchtower shines again as thought. The light's next blow was aimed at Subaru. The light approaches at a speed that does not even allow them to blink, and it targets his vital points with its single blow. Its devastating power is already known to Subaru, who had died from it. Therefore, the moment his brain detects that it has been targeted by the light, death has already been determined. The light attacked, aiming straight for Subaru's forehead. It is death itself, killing its prey without a sound, only leaving behind a skewing wind. Natsuki Subaru is once again, at his wit's end, about to be killed in cold blood. Subaru, M. Betty, I suppose? In this case, Natsuki Subaru was not the only one who was aimed at. The sound echoed, and the attack that should have hit Subaru misses. The cause is simple: Subaru's strength surpassed the power of the attack. EM is one of the 3 original spells Subaru developed with Beatrice. This particular one is absolute defense magic. During the activation of EM, Subaru will not receive any interference from the outside world. It is the result of applying all of Beatrice's magic skill and knowledge into manipulating time and space in a limited area around Subaru. Subaru, I know the effect is similar to that bastard's, but I kinda feel weird. Regulus, an archbishop representing greed, could stop the effect of time in his body by the transferring of his heart. EM can be said to be a downsized version of that ability. However, there is no harmful side effect like stopping the heart, and you can be invincible as long as one's mana is not exhausted. In this situation though, it's nothing more than buying some time. Subaru, but ugh. Just buying time? I've got important things to do. Betty, hey. Subaru, what are you screaming for? Are you okay, I suppose? Behind Subaru, Beatrice's worried voice yells as she shields them. It was like this because even though they were being defended, sound and shock are still transmitted. After activating EM, the light of the watchtower seemed to wonder why Subaru was not dying even after being hit again and again, so it kept bombarding him with consecutive attacks. Subaru, UF. The speed of the rapid fire and the accuracy of its aim were extraordinary. Although the pain and shock passes right through Subaru's body, unfortunately, it is human reflex to react with a yell when something hits him. Emilia, Subaru. It's already Watching Subaru being showered by a concentrated attack, Emilia tries to cover him from atop the roof. Looking to protect Subaru from the watchtower's attack, a thick and enormous ice barrier is raised from the sandy ground. Perhaps the toughest defensive wall Emilia could create in an instant. It was a shield from the attacks that were being shot at Subaru without any other aim, but Emilia, no way. Julius, even the ice walls do not stand a chance. Emilia lets out a shriek and Julius a startled cry. As they could see, the ice wall was crushed in one shot. That unbelievable power was not the only reason. The ice wall was struck, but somehow weakened the light enough to avoid it hitting Subaru. A lot of it bounced back and struck the sand, which blew up in a white smoke. If you look at Emilia's damaged ice wall, it was melted rather than drilled. Emilia, heat? Did the heat melt the ice? Julius, something fell to the ground, a needle? Looking at the effects of the attack, Emilia and Julius get different conclusions at the same time. In the meantime, the attack continues. Subaru was assaulted by a staggering amount of attacks, and even though he was in an invincible state, it was exceeding their limit. Betty, Subaru? There's a problem. Subaru, I'm Listinia. But I can tug. Betty, if things keep going the way they are, we'll be running out of mana very soon, I suppose. Subaru, already. Betty, it's almost over. At Beatrice's cry, Subaru grinds his teeth while still being shot at. Of course, what Beatrice means to say is not since mana is running out, you should supply more, I suppose, but since mana is running out, we should counterattack, I suppose. Subaru, can you do it? Betty, what a foolish question, I suppose. Beatrice doesn't even answer his question. Hearing the response of his trusted partner, Subaru loosens his jaw as he prepares himself. Subaru, the third is incomplete. Let's go with the second one. Betty, I'm going to deactivate EM right after it hits. There was no time. Subaru looked at Emilia looked at him and nodded. There was no time to discuss concrete measures. But he believed it was conveyed. Subaru, hook. The light sets off, and again Subaru suffers a direct hit. Because EM is activated, the attack will not reach him, it will be cancelled. Each of the original spells is a trump card that can only be used once a day. Upon releasing EM, Subaru will lose its protective function against that light. And they'll have to fight back before the next one reaches the light. As if it could read Subaru's actions, the next strike of light was even faster. So far, the speed, power and frequency are obviously meant to finish off Subaru. Naturally, with Subaru's paper-thin defense, only one shot would be enough to send him out of this world if it hits directly. And so... Emilia, stop. A vortex of magical power gets casted in multiple manners in front of Subaru, and creates walls of ice standing on the sand ground. This time the defense that was not limited to only one wall, but 6 sheets of ice walls were made in the same time. The light struck straight into that 6-sheet defense. It went through the first one simply, the second one with ease, the third one like it was nothing. However, there was a slight resistance on the 4th sheet, and the 5th one almost managed to stand up. And in the 6th and last one, the speed of light was clearly dulled. But could still go through it. The light penetrated through the 6th ice wall, and was about to pierce through the forehead of defenseless Subaru. Just before it hit, a knight's sword draws a semicircle, catching the light that had lost its speed and cuts it off. Julius, unfortunately, there are a number of women who will grieve if he is hurt. Rushing from the dragon carriage to them and striking the light with a slash of his sword without minding the danger is Julius. Emilia's defense weakened it, and Julius stopped it. Even though he is slightly jealous of the combined technique, Subaru's preparation is complete. Subaru, let's go. The second. Absolute Invalidation Magic EMT. Lifting up the hood that protected him from the sand, Subaru opened his mouth wide and chanted. Then, hiding behind Subaru's back, Beatrice drained mana from Subaru and multiplied it with her own magical power to cast a new spell. In the next moment, a light expands around Subaru and Beatrice, forming a spherical field of about 10 meters, also encompassing the dragon carriage. It was transparent in appearance, equally wrapped themselves in a sphere of light. However, the effect is enormous. Julius, this is. In front of the astonished Julius, the Watchtower again radiates light. He sees it at the corner of his eyes and takes up his sword at once, instantly opening his eyes wide. The light went straight ahead, aiming directly for Subaru, but the moment it entered the field, it simply had lost all of its force. The overwhelming speed that seemingly surpassed even bullets disappeared, and the only thing left behind after losing speed and power was a strange white object that was long and slender. It was easily brought down by Julius's swinging sword, falling on the sand and scattering away. Subaru, a needle, ha? Julius, something like that. No, more than that, Subaru, this magic. Subaru, wait. There are heaps of things I want to talk about, but for now we have to withdraw. Get in the dragon carriage right away. Let's get out of here. We can't take too long. Julius. Understood. Let's hurry. With the call of urgency, Julius jumps into the dragon carriage along with his questions. He took the reins immediately, and the dragon carriage turned over its head towards the sand time. It would be a suicidal act to go towards the Watchtower now. This was the right decision and he had no choice but to believe it. Subaru, let's go. Don't get too far from me. Stay within the light. Emilia, Subaru, wow. Even though the light's firing. Clinging to the roof of the running dragon carriage, Emilia watches Subaru with astonishment. It seems like even though it has no effect, the light continues to target Subaru. But no matter how many attacks it launched, the light will simply lose its power as soon as it enters the EMT field, and fall into the sand as it is. The invalidation is absolute. Julius, at any rate, it's a great power. Is this yours and Beatrice-sama's trump card of some sort? Subaru, one of the trump cards. I'm not going to spoil it. For now, our priority should probably be getting away from the Watchtower. No, definitely. Julius, I think it is an application of magic invalidating the effects of mana within the range? If that's the case, it's the natural enemy of mages. No, you're a formidable opponent for anyone who uses mana to aid their skills. Subaru, I would say, it only seems to give a relative advantage, it doesn't make me stronger. I'll still lose in a fair fight against a strong guy. This is the ability that I developed thinking of when I'll give Roshchi a black eye. It seemed Julius had genuinely praised him, so he felt a little better. Of course, escaping from the attack of the Watchtower also brought him relief, but in any case, it was nothing more than letting his guard down. However, it was probably impossible to predict what letting his guard down would bring right now, even for Subaru, so no one could be blamed. Emilia, Subaru? Are we going back to the dunes in front the flower garden this way? Subaru, for just a short time, but yeah. We need to polish and refine our countermeasure anyhow. Saying that, Sandtime, the way to their retreat, swirls in the sandy wind the moment EMT field touches it, the world breaks. Subaru, huh? Betty, damn it, I suppose. Until then, Beatrice had been clinging to his body with relief at getting through the attacks. Right in front of her, the view of the nightly sand dunes was tore apart as she watched, making her voice tremble. Betty, the distortion of space is invalidated by EMT. Subaru? Betty, it's like you said, I suppose. The distortion here is similar to Betty's door crossing in that house. In other words, the distorted space will return to its original state. Subaru, what does that mean? Subaru's question does not go on to the end, only the feeling of Beatrice clinging to him remains. As it is, the world is torn and unraveled like paper, coming apart, and the crack in space swallowed up Batrash with Subaru and Beatrice, and the dragon carriage with Emilia and the others. Subaru, not good. Emilia. Emilia, Subaru. Thrown down into the darkness, Subaru cried out, while losing any effects of gravity. He didn't know where the dragon carriage was. But he could hear Emilia's voice echoing in response to Subaru's cry. Subaru, this is bad. Before he could say it, he was thrown out into the other side of the broken space. The boundary between the flower field and the sand sea was broken, and it was seen that a small group was swallowed in it. From very, very far away, watching, a shadow wriggled inside the tower. It walked away from the window, stepped onto the cobblestones, and went down a spiral staircase. Its steps were slow, but gradually became faster and more impatient. Shadow, found him. And, as if it hadn't spoken in many years, let out a cracking murmur. Except, no one who heard it would be mistaken, it sounded absolutely delighted. Shadow, found him. That was for sure. Chapter 13, Mockery of the Sand. Space distorted, the world broke, and they fell straight into the rift in reality that resulted from it. As if it was made of fragile thin paper, the world was easily torn apart. Swallowed by the distorted space, Subaru's eardrums heard no sound, which was in stark contrast to the magnificent visuals around him. He only heard a voice screaming, as if someone was calling him. Even that voice also faded away, and before long, he could not hear it. The feeling of someone holding his chest also went missing, and the hands holding him were tore away from each other, drifting apart far away. With no one around, abandoned in this empty place, it seemed like he became completely alone. While being tormented by such loneliness and sadness, Subaru's consciousness began slowly emerging. And then, Ram, how long are you going to sleep? Get up, lazy Barusu. Subaru, Ak? Feeling something sharp poking at his side, Subaru got up screaming in pain at the shock. Having jumped up reflexively, sand falls off from all around his body. Coughing, he spits out dirt which had gotten into his mouth. Subaru, Ak. Thursday. 2. Ha. What? What happened? Rubbing his eyes, he checks his surroundings as he stands up. With shaky knees and a poor foothold, he gets up comically. Beneath his feet, the fine grains of sand were laid just as before. As his consciousness returns, Subaru could determine that this was an extension of the Augria Dunes. However, the view around him was not clear. Because it was dark, really dark. In the darkness where he can't even see his own hands, Subaru's eye caught the presence of a small artificial light. Ram, you can sleep so well in such an emergency, it's amazing. I'm speechless. A bitter voice hits him, and the owner of the light snorts. What is emitting the light is a type of mana stone, and the light is made of processed ragmite or fashioned into a tool like a lantern. Looking at the face illuminated by the light, Subaru raised his eyebrows. Subaru, Ram, is that you? Ram, who else can you see? REM? I didn't expect such a lame answer. Subaru, you and REM look alike, but it oozes from inside that you are not her. In response to Ram, who seems harsher than usual, Subaru gives a bitter reply. He took the lantern out of her and looked around with the light. Subaru, this place, where is it? What happened? Ram also wants to know the whereabouts of this place. As for what happened, it is 3 times worse than what Barossa can imagine. Subaru, does that mean you expect me to be an optimist? Do you look down on pessimists? Ram, in this case, I wonder which is better. That reply was probably accompanied by a shrug. Even if she is right next to him, it's hard to tell Ram's state in the darkness, as the space illuminated by the light is awfully large. Perhaps it seems that they are in some sort of hollow space. Overhead, there was a slightly tall ceiling, joined with walls that indicated the extent of its depth. Subaru, can't feel any airflow, can't see the sky. You mean we were thrown in somewhere? Ram, if Beatrice-sama's words before we were separated are true, the space distortion is the cause, right? Subaru, separated, that's right, separated. Where are the others? While listening to Ram's disinterested and emotionless demeanor, his understanding caught up with reality. Subaru moved the light from right to left, seeking a figure other than Ram's in their surroundings. However, as he searched the illuminated space, the figure that he desperately wanted to see was not reflected. Ram, as you can see, we were separated. Barossa's nullification magic tricked the Watchtower. As a result, it's not clear, but maybe instead of going into the right path, we were trapped in a distorted spacetime where we'll wander forever. Subaru, what are you saying? Why are you so calm? The combination of me and you. It's totally randomly shuffled. At Ram's calm expression, Subaru's face turns pale and he raises his voice. Beatrice's cries, space breaking apart right before his eyes, and he instantly remembers it. The rift swallowed Subaru and the others' whole party and dragged them into another space. At that time, Subaru and Ram were both traveling along, but they should have been in different groups. Subaru was riding Patrash and Ram was in the dragon carriage. Ram, it seems that this separation does not take into account who you are in contact with to determine who accompanies who. As soon as we entered the rift, Ram should have been hugging REM. But it turned out like this. Subaru, I was also supposed to be clinging to Biko. And yet I can't find her. I can't see her. No way, there's only Ram here with me? What kind of grouping is this? If the condition of that separation was not contact, then is there any other reason? This group was made up of 8. There is no particular common feature that only Subaru and Ram share. Again, is it completely random? Subaru, no, I'll postpone guessing the conditions for now. More than that, we have to hurry and join up with everyone. No. There's something even more important. REM. Ram. Subaru, you and I are too, so it's still good. If any of the others who were separated were with someone else, there's still hope. But if there's someone who's alone, and if that's REM, that's awful. Emilia and Julius, who single-handedly took on all the fighting power in this party, were no problem. Meili and Beatrice could also manage to get by alone with their respective abilities. In terms of Anastasia/Scarf Dona, there is probably a trump card used to fight back against lust. Although less honorable than other ones, Subaru and Ram's combination was still manageable. But REM was a different story. Unlike the others, REM is unable to perform any independent actions by herself. Even if there is someone with her, protecting the perpetually sleeping girl would turn any kind of undertaking into a Herculean task. And the worst of all, if REM was completely isolated from others, then death would be the only thing awaiting her in this lonely sand sea. Subaru, it's important for us to meet up with everyone else, but the top priority is securing REM. I can't leave her in such a lonely place. That much is sure, not at all. Absolutely not. Ram. Barossa. Subaru, 'cause I said I'd bring you here, thinking that you might be able to wake up if you meet the sage. It's useless. Absolutely, shit, just REM. Ram, Barossa, calm down. Even I will lose it now. Subaru, why are you telling me to calm down? Are not you worried because REM is missing from your memory? Ram, ha. There is no such thing. Imagining the worst possibility, Subaru starts mumbling desperately about the future and counting up his regrets. Hearing Subaru speak, Ram could not stand it and exploded. She grabs the confused Subaru by his collar and presses him hard against the sand wall behind him. Ram, Do you think you're the only one who cares about REM? Don't push it too far, Barusu. Even without my true feelings, Ram is still Rem's older sister. Don't make a fool of me. Subaru. Ram, I can still slightly feel my connection with her. So, at least for now she is okay. That much is certain, so settle down for the time being. It's not like that face expresses any emotion. However, seeing the unbearable unease and sadness in her eyes as she tried to appear calm, Subaru loosened the tension in his shoulders. Ram also moved her hands. Released from being pushed on the wall, Subaru looks down in shame. Subaru. My bad. I'm sorry. Really, I was the worst idiot right now. Ram, just about as usual. If Barusa starts to reflect on his life, it'll take a whole day. Stop wasting our time. Subaru. My bad. Experiencing Ram's sharp tongue and emotional testimony, Subaru finally lets out a single apology. Then he slaps his cheeks with all his strength, getting back his fighting spirit. Although Ram assured him that REM was safe, the fear of her being alone couldn't be dispelled. Their situation will not change if they don't reunite with the others soon. Subaru, anyway, let's rush this reunion. Ram, can't you use your connection with REM to work out her location? Ram, it's difficult. That girl is asleep, so the only thing transmitted is her heartbeat. There are other means of clairvoyance, but they're not too reliable. Subaru, why? Ram, this sand dunes, it's full of maybiests, and there are almost no ordinary animals or plants around. Clairvoyance is not able to borrow their sights if its wavelength does not match with Ram's. It doesn't synchronize with the demon beasts. And at this time, Ram is only able to borrow the eyes from Barusa's Earth Dragon. Subaru, Patrash? No, that should be enough. I want to check if Patrash and Gan are with someone, especially if we can rescue the whole dragon carriage. Ram, that wouldn't be very useful. At Ram's disinterested attitude, Subaru feels frustrated and tilts his head, deep in thought. Now was the time to collect as much information as they could to get reunited again. And yet, he couldn't understand why Ram was hesitating here. However, before he could touch on the subject of her true intentions, an answer appeared in front of them both. Subaru. Subaru sees a light pass by from the corner of his eyes, different from the lantern he was holding. Subaru shivered as he had a bad experience with light passing through the edge of his sight, but the light that appeared was shaken by a gentle movement, totally different from that. The light gradually comes closer, and slowly the figures become clearer. Anastasia, Ramsan and Natsuki-kun, it seems that your discussion is over? Subaru, Anastasia and Patrash? Hearing the familiar Kararaji dialect, Subaru's head slightly lifted up in surprise. In front of him, holding the lantern from which the light that Subaru saw emanated, and straddling Patrash's back, is Anastasia. At Anastasia's question, Ram bows as she lifts the hem of her robe on the spot. Ram, thank you for your consideration, Anastasia-sama. May I ask, how are the surroundings? Anastasia, I just checked all the way back, but I could not see any of the other children. There are only 3 of us out here, and this sort of girl. Ram, is that so? Anastasia, there is no use worrying about it. Although it may be a pitiful fact. Ram, thank you for your concern. Oh, I see. I shall do so. To Anastasia on top of the dragon, Ram responded politely. From the course of the conversation, Subaru vaguely understood that Anastasia had been looking around. But even convinced of that, there was not enough information to understand what was going on. Subaru, hey, Ram. Weren't we the only ones here? What does this mean, can you explain? Ram, I don't remember telling you that Ram and Barusa were alone. Barusa was the one who made that rash judgment of his own accord. Unsightly. Subaru, you were so worried about REM you failed to mention it, is what you mean, charming Ne-sama. Ram, ha. Hearing Subaru, Ram snorted her nose with her usual tone. Subaru walks towards Anastasia while recovering from that attitude. Subaru, regardless of any deception, it's good news that Anastasia is safe. I'm relieved. Anastasia, are you not confusing this deception with a misunderstanding? I would be relieved to learn that I am not alone. Besides, Natsuki-kun's Earth Dragon Patrashjan was a very helpful good girl. Stepping on the saddle, Anastasia carefully tries to get down off of Patrash. And Patrash immediately crouches down to help her descent. As expected, a proper Earth Dragon. It's a handsome Earth Dragon. But it's a female. Subaru, no one else is hiding, right? It's genuinely just the 4 of us? Anastasia, including Patrashjan, there is no doubt that we are 4 people. Emilia-san and Julius would have no reason not to come forth, but I don't know about Meili-chan. Subaru, she might have taken advantage of the commotion to run away, huh? You don't have to say it. Picturing the girl with braided hair in his mind, Subaru thought about Meili's options. Just before being separated, Meili's secret insurance for having a demon beast accompanying them was exposed by Subaru. Subaru, who returned by death, actually knows that Meili's monster served to protect the dragon carriage, both from the Watchtower and flocks of attacking Oiran bears. However, since that was an event that didn't happen in this loop, essentially, the only one who knows Meili's reason for having the sandworm follow them is the girl herself. In this particular situation, having Meili escape the group and try to leave the sand dunes alone wouldn't be strange. Subaru, but she won't do that. Is what I want to believe. Anastasia, expectations? Or should it be trust? Subaru, make what you will of it. Leaving that aside, how are the surroundings? Setting aside the topic of Meili, Subaru asks Anastasia for a report on her inspection. She put her hands in the sleeves of the robe and tilted her head, saying, "About that, huh?" Anastasia, judging from what I saw, we are certainly in the sand dunes, but perhaps this place could be the underground. Subaru, underground? How could there be an underground in sand dunes? Anastasia, under the sand of the dunes. A cave. More of a cavity, so to speak, but the temperature is obviously lower than above ground, and the air also feels heavy. Subaru nods as the girl swings her robe in an appealing gesture, joining the front parts to keep out the cold. Certainly, the chilliness of the atmosphere felt here is far stronger than the earlier setting. In a space with a tall ceiling where you can't see the sky, it was a suitable guess. Subaru, underneath the dunes. I've got a bad feeling about this. I pray that this isn't a sandworm's lair. Anastasia, that's. It's a possible scenario. In fact, they have witnessed the existence of sandworms inhabiting the ground, and given the enormity of the individuals employed by Meili, this cavity is just large enough for it to be possible. Considering the ecology of eyeless sandworms, this dark space devoid of any light would be an exact fit. Subaru, this team seriously lacks combat power. Me, Ram and Anastasia, is this a special front of non-combatants? Ram, Amelia-sama's own knight, proudly describing himself as a non-combatant. This is hopeless. Subaru, I'm just stating the reality. Without Beatrice, I can't be so conceited and rely on my whip skills alone. In terms of everyone's self-defense measures, this really was a group that lacked fighting power. Restrained Ram and Subaru without Beatrice, to name a few. Ram, by the way, what about Beatrice-sama? Do you feel any connection relating to your contract? Subaru, unfortunately, my and Biko's heart are strongly tied, but not in a realistic sense. No, Beatrice said before that she could feel me, but I can't. Ram, useless. Subaru, shut up. As Ram sighs and looks away, Subaru discreetly zoomed his face closer to Anastasia. As he murmured at her calm composure. Subaru, so, can you fight? What do you say? Anastasia/Scarf Dona, if it comes to it, of course I'll fight no matter what. But it will shorten Anna's life. I'd like to avoid it as much as possible. I would be relying on you guys. Subaru, those expectations will probably not be met. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad. For a moment, Subaru snorted at Anastasia, who appeared as Echidna. Then, looking at Patrash, who quietly awaited for instructions, Subaru stroked the tip of her nose with his palm. The jet-black dragon kept silent and nuzzled Subaru with her hard scales. Subaru, it hurts, but it's a relief. Without Amelia or Beatrice. But I'm relieved to have you. Except, it still doesn't make a complete group reunion. Ram, Barusu. As he was sharing his anxieties with Patrash, at Ram's call he looked back at her. Then, Ram crossed her arms while facing Subaru and jerked her chin towards Anastasia. Ram, we can't stand here forever. Let's move to meet up with others. Fortunately, thanks to Anastasia, we have light. Ram and the rest will proceed. Subaru, oh, I didn't know, the light was brought by Anastasia. Anastasia, just before the dragon carriage was swallowed, I could only grab the emergency bag that was prepared by Natsuki-koen. Thanks to you, I was able to bring in the light, a knife, and some emergency food. Anastasia pointed at Patrash, where a small emergency bag was hanging on the saddle. It is literally the equipment that Subaru had prepared for the dragon carriage as an emergency takeout. Even if such opportunity doesn't occur to use it, he felt relieved that he had thought of it. Subaru, you shouldn't have made fun of the wit I have in hand, after all. From now on, let's not forget to check the emergency door at any place where we will stay for the first time. Ram, jokes aside, it is Barusu's hand. So, I will give you a light as a reward, please lead the way at once. Subaru, huh? This is reward? Passing him the lantern, both Ram and Anastasia get on Patrash's back. This scene, regardless of how you see it, puts Subaru in the position of a servant. Anastasia, as a matter of fact, it's easily a three-seater, there would be plenty of room if Ram-san and I cramp in, wouldn't it? Ram, let's stop there, Anastasia-sama. If he can get close, you can imagine Barossa would happily try to touch my body. Subaru, you are imagining stuff all your own, but if you go that way I'll imagine a lot more than that. Don't mess with me. I'll give you a taste of puberty. He strongly argues with his middle finger up, and Anastasia smiles bitterly, as one would expect. Ram reacts as usual, as Subaru continues walking the cave with one lantern in his hand. Subaru and Ram's light skirmish made it seem like they had forgotten the circumstances, but it surely hid their anxiety in each other's heart and brought just a bit of relief to their minds. Perhaps they both realized it, but didn't say anything. Although walking anxiously, Subaru and the others were advancing through the great cave of the sand. As expected, Patrash is used to it, and there won't be any problem with her movement even if you were to put 2 heavy stones on her back. Apart from the feeling of sand entering his boots, Subaru had learned the technique for walking in the sand sea these past few days, and was able to proceed without much difficulty. Subaru, the wind. I can kind of feel it, and also can't. Ram, I feel it. But given the wind's thinness, it's still a long way from being connected to above ground. Along the way, wetting his finger on his tongue, Subaru tried to examine the airflow, but it wasn't quite clear. On the other hand, as the wind-sensitive Ram feels it out, she concludes that the exit is still far ahead. The way to this exit was what he wanted to give priority to, looking to meet up with his companions. Unfortunately though, there was no indication that the signs of wind would be very reliable. Ram, Amelia-sama and Julia-sama shouldn't get lost due to the guidance of the lesser spirits. And that's why I doubt that there is a malicious intent in the selection of this grouping. Subaru, well, it is quite useful to be guided by a lesser spirit. Damn, in my case Biko is so strong that she keeps away the lesser spirits. She's far beyond their capacity. To be clear, this was something beyond Emilia and Julius's exceptional fighting power. Even when setting out to look for a lost member, things may not proceed as you would expect. You can only try not to overlook anything around you as much as possible when you proceed. Anastasia, Ram-san, before Natsuki-kun woke up, seemed considerably shaken. Looking for REM now, she seems to be hiding behind her attitude. Subaru. Is that so? Secretly, Anastasia shares the story, which made his fight with Ram after waking up feeling more and more awkward. Subaru had spent the past year alongside Ram, after having the memories of her sister completely erased. Any connection those two previously had must have left behind some remains after being erased. If no one else, Subaru at least had to believe so. Anastasia, well, ain't fun seeing you huddled up all gloomy and miserable like that, so why not look ahead if you're so down about it? If you don't, you might miss something important. Subaru. Don't throw me off like that. You, stop giving me those nice words. I'm stuck in the exact same situation as the one you came from. Anastasia, sooner or later, I wish you would start thinking of me separately from my originator. Your distaste for that girl is excessively obstinate. This is something I've picked up with time. Subaru, I don't know any other approach. I'll keep it in a corner of my mind. The tongue-in-cheek talkative exchange seemed to distract from the impatience and anxiety of not making any progress. In the midst of that conversation, the party advances through the great cave. Nothing really changes, the sand path and the sand walls. Walking along that path there were few things to think about. That was Subaru, might be a beast nest, we have to be quite careful. There's a chance we'll run into one. Ram, that's what Ram is concerned about. Kicking the sand under his feet, Subaru grumbles at Ram as she expresses a similar opinion. They continued into the great cave, and soon an hour had already passed. With no one and nothing around, their anxiety, impatience and bad premonitions continue to grow. Of course, not having enemies show up is a welcome situation, but the extensive silence couldn't be any help to wipe out the bad feelings regarding this place. As if it was detached from the whole world. Subaru, no way, we couldn't have been swallowed by a hyperspace that does not connect to anywhere, right? Anastasia, well then, would you tell me where the wind we're relying on is coming from? Do you think it's the heavy breathing of an unusually big and ferocious beast who owns this cave? Subaru, that's not even funny, it's rather scary. In fact, it would be no wonder even if that happened. They had already seen it with their own eyes that even the world could be broken apart. Whatever this rift is connected to, it would not be worth a surprise. Ram, regardless of the maliciousness of this selection, it is hard to believe that whoever set it up had considered it could be broken. We weren't aiming for it with the negation spell, it was just a coincidence. Subaru, what do you mean, precisely? Ram, it is useless to imagine the worst scenario that this road, as it is connected to the monster's stomach. Look, see. The lack of progress was leading to pessimistic theories, which Ram rationally denies. Then, at the end of the explanation, she urged Subaru as he stopped to look ahead. Following her indication, Subaru holds out the lantern to look forward. Then, the illuminated passage of the cavity gets narrow, in front of their eyes. Subaru, it's a crossroad. Anastasia, right or left, we have to make a choice. What do we do? Subaru, according to my knowledge, Kurapika * said to choose right when the time called for it. TN, Hunter x Hunter reference. Anastasia, who's that? Looking at it practically, he remembered hearing that people tend to unconsciously choose to proceed left when they get lost. Perhaps it had to do with dominance, as for the dominant hand, dominant leg, and other complicated factors like those, or that's what was said and thought of it at the time. For that reason, Subaru wanted to follow the theory of a skillful character he once knew and chose the right path which he thought was correct, but... Ram, so, Barusu, which way do you want to go? Subaru. Honestly speaking, left. Ram, what happened to Kurapika? Anastasia, who's that? Subaru replies, Ram asks question after question, and just Anastasia just pokes fun. If you look only at those words as written, the exchange may appear to be as such. But in reality, the three people who exchanged words had a stiff expression and worrisome looks on their faces. On top of that, even Patrash, who can't speak, was staring at the right path with stern eyes. The cause was the overwhelming negativity they were feeling from the right path. Abstractly speaking, a detestable premonition. If you choose more words, it was almost a dread. It's deadly to select the right path, their instincts were ringing the alarm bell. Subaru, the right. I think it's dangerous. I have a feeling it's not going to be pleasant. Ram, surprisingly, I agree with Barusu. What you think, Anastasia-sama? Anastasia, according to the Kararaji rule it goes to the majority, by the support of 2 votes. Besides, I am honestly lacking the courage to choose the right side. As no sleeves would swing, Anastasia made the gesture of swinging both hands as the answer for all. Subaru is not the only one. Both Ram and Anastasia were having a strange sensation from the path at the right, as well as Patrash. Therefore, the right road couldn't be chosen. Subaru, then, left, that also feels like choosing a terrible option though. Ram, so, turning back? There's nothing we can get that way. Subaru, there's nothing to lose is what you're saying, I might just be overly negative. As Subaru failed to make a decision, Ram and Anastasia seemed ready to jump in. As he cannot help but shrug his shoulders, Subaru steps forward to walk in front of Patrash. Straight towards the road on the left. Embracing their hesitation as they advanced, it seems they grew their distance from the right path in this great cave. He found that the pressure that he felt through the walls of sand kept getting farther away, and the stiffness in his shoulders was naturally released. Ram, what an unpleasant place. She felt the same thing, and as he heard Ram murmuring, Subaru agrees in silence. At this crossroads, the right path caused overwhelming negative thoughts. They chose the left road out of something like instinct to avoid the other, but there was one more reason. Inside the Subaru's chest, he felt the presence of something shouting in joy towards the right path. It would be horrible to obey what it said. It was also undeniably a major factor on why Subaru didn't choose that road. The team of non-combatants went through the cavity, and a few more hours passed by in the way. Subaru. Anastasia. Ram. As they slowly advanced their search on the great cave, the number of words spoken between them dropped drastically. With their fatigue, and not to mention the darkness, any sense of time was fuzzy, but what was wearing down their spirit along the walk was silence. In fact, Subaru felt like that several hours had passed, he didn't know if it was true. There is a possibility that they had utilized the time better than they thought, or even that they had completely wasted it. What they knew for sure was that there was no progress, no more than that. Subaru. At that split, I wonder if we should have gone right. Ram, after that much silence, you can only think to complain? Stop it. Shameful. Murmuring, he moved his dry lips to complain and Ram bitterly pierces back. However, her poison also lacked ambition. Not being able to find anything like this, it caused her to also be slightly dominated by anxiety. Although the foothold in the sand path was bad, there was some confidence after already walking a few kilometers on it. So if you couldn't see any end to the cave, you couldn't help but be swept over by a bad feeling. It is natural that you would doubt that you made the wrong choice. Even more, if you reach a dead end, you'd have to give up. Subaru, the rapid fire of those lights above ground. What do you think it was? Subaru changed the direction of the topic, for fear that the negative conversation would continue as it was. The topic that turned up was the light of the Watchtower, the defense mechanism of the dunes, which seemed to have been prepared by the sage. Ram, it was a needle. Subaru, needle? To that question, Ram responded with a few words. She spilled a sigh at Subaru's following question and gently stroked her pink hair. Ram, I don't know the small details, but it was firing long and narrow needles enchanted with magical powers. The needles carried high heat, probably the effect of firing magic. But the needle itself seemed to be specially made. As it was repelled and fell on the sand, it disintegrated and disappeared. Subaru, in that uproar, to see so properly. Ram, if you just looked at it, you would know about that much. Without a doubt, it seemed Ram's observation power was not as ordinary as she said so. When Subaru just kept staring, Anastasia shook her head in amazement. In Ram's case, she was aware of her own talents, but was still speaking sarcastically. Subaru, what do you think was the purpose? Ram, kill those approaching the Watchtower. It's a mystery why it relentlessly aimed at Borusu. It's standard practice to take down the weaker enemies first, so that might be it. Subaru, shit, I can't deny it. If you look at it from afar, you couldn't help but arrive at the same conclusion. Nonetheless, because of that they had no casualties. The conclusion you reach is, it's good to have a weak, invincible, magical Subaru. But in that case, Subaru, it means, a friendly encounter with the sage would be difficult. Anastasia, I think it's premature to say so. If I'm not mistaken, did we not set out with the intention of challenging these setbacks knowingly? There is a chance for a discussion to occur, it's what I think. Ram, at worst, our business is with the sage's knowledge, and not their personality. If they don't talk, you can just tie them up and give them a good shaking until they do. Subaru, ne-sama, was that your villainous side talking? Ram, if there is something you want, take measures. It's not a child's play. As Subaru becomes dumbfounded, Ram remains strangely calm. Just hearing those statements, he felt he was being reminded of how sweet and shallow his own resolutions were. Regardless of whether it's actually done, there is no doubt that Ram is prepared for it. That only is a proof that she is serious about REM. Subaru. To touch Ram's resolve, Subaru might have to make some decisions regarding his own resolutions. He haven't thought of getting his hands dirty for REM. REM is not to be blamed for that either. What he has to do is to be prepared to rip off the results. When confronted with the existence of the sage, no matter what kind of opponent that is, he has to be absolutely determined, such resolution. Patrash, Sue. Subaru, Patrash? At the same time, Patrash holds her breath and Subaru bits his lips. The dragon glares at the path with stern eyes and groans a little. Subaru, who noticed that stare, also stopped his feet and returned to calm the earth dragon. He stroked her neck and called out, "What's wrong?" Subaru, did you saw something? What? Ram, that is. Ram said on behalf, interrupting Subaru. Anastasia frowns and looks at the passage like Patrash. Of course, nothing could be seen anything in the extended darkness, but a different feeling that appealed rather than seeing. Seeping inside the nose was a smell of something burning. Anastasia, do you think it's a smell of fire? Ram, I can't think of anything else. But I don't think something like a kitchen could possibly be here. Subaru, if this is a fire. The cause behind this smell is civilized people, right? Ram and Anastasia. At Subaru's clinging question, neither Ram nor Anastasia could just easily nod. He could also understand the girl's judgment. But the smell that was drifting was clearly a scent of something supposedly burning. Ram said like cooking something, but also the aroma was close to it. It's a bonfire, or a stew for a meal. If that's the case. Subaru, do you think there's a possibility of that being Amelia's? Anastasia, if the premise was skipped to the same place, there is enough possibility. Nevertheless, whether it's rational or irrational to use fire in such situation, I would leave that judgment to the rest. Subaru. Even if it's discussed here, the answer won't come as for who lays ahead of the road. If so, you should call out and check what your partner's intention is. Anastasia, even people who are ahead of the road are not always friendly. If not Amelia's, could it be it's the sage? It's hard to believe that the sages who should be in the Watchtower would come down, or not. In that case, if the sage continues to be hostile, a corresponding attack is also to be expected. Subaru, hide the light and move forward? What I mean is, if they are using fire then there is light on their side. We at least should hide. Anastasia, it's funny to keep speculating about it, we also have to check what's the cause is, so I think it's a reasonable idea. Anastasia nods to Subaru's proposal, and after that Ram also quietly agrees with it. When the lights of the two lanterns were turned off, the party went back to the path where the smell of fire was drifting from, relying only on the Subaru's light. Ram, Borusu. Subaru, what? Ram, if anything happens, just leave it and run straight away. Don't hold a grudge. Subaru, curse me if I do that. In the light held by Subaru, Ram slightly loosened her lips, and Subaru led straight through the passage. When the scent of the fire gradually increased, he felt Patrash's breath on his back. Subaru. It's the light. Beyond the passage, he found a slightly shimmering red light. Subaru immediately dropped his own light and instructed the three behind him to be silent. Then he squatted down and stepped on the sand stealthily to confirm the state of the light. 1 step, 2 steps. As they moved forward, they could see that the light was somewhat coming across the corner. The passage was slightly bent to the left, and the fire was from there. Quietly reaching the turning point, and slightly peeking on the other side while leaning against the wall. At that moment, the wind carrying a slight heat tickled Subaru's forehead and unintentionally closed his eyes. Immediately after, Subaru's foot gouged down unexpectedly, the sand slided, and it rolled his body diagonally. Subaru, what the? He couldn't bear the surprise attack, and Subaru forgot to step, and he rolled down the slope. The fine particles of sand couldn't, and he slided long down all the way to the bottom. Thrusting down from the top of the sand hill, Subaru rolled down from a steep slope of sand about 10 meters high, again spat out sand and raised his body. Subaru, ugh. Thursday. Again sand. No, that then. Subaru shakes his head and looks around. In this sudden surprise, he dropped his lantern. If it was somewhere nearby, he started searching for it, stretching his hand, and he touched something hard. For an instant, he thought he had found the lantern, but it felt different compared to the hardness of that he was holding. The surface was crisp and pleasant to touch, like a wooden stick. When he lifted it up, it was lighter compared to its thickness and length. Subaru, what is it? Even if you looked closely, you wouldn't know what it was in that pitch-black darkness. When he timidly smelled it, it felt like the smell of charcoal. Subaru. The next moment, when he was thinking that, a light came right behind him suddenly. The wisps that appeared in the back were red, shimmering and primitive, and they were called flames. Then, as the flames began to light up the world, Subaru saw the identity of the thing he grabbed. That's probably a creature's foot. Things that were animals burned down until it turned into charred remains as a result. Around the place where Subaru was sitting, the remnants of former creatures that became these charred remains were scattered, and Subaru had slipped right into the middle of countless burned dead bodies. Subaru, oh. Wow. Throwing away the charred waste in his hand, Subaru aimed to retreat. However, there was a terrible flame that existed behind while he tried to retreat back, and his neck was burned by the heat wave, and this time he fell down just on his face. And finally, he turned back and looked at it face to face. Monster, ________. Subaru was thrown out of reality, facing a tremendous roar from his front. Why all the demon beasts' roars are so disgusting that they irritate human beings to the limit of their disgust. With such a high-pitched roar, it was like countless babies were crying all at once. It is a blasphemous creature that Subaru had never seen. It burns red in a place full of burned bodies. It is truly a devil beast, but the fur color is different from what he has seen in the past. As far as Subaru knew, all of the demon beasts were distorted and ugly, but they were often in such a form that they resembled an existing creature one way or another. Same for the white whale or the great rabbit. In any case, there was a basic foundation of an animal. However, this time, the monster that exists in front of him, he doesn't want to apply the same concept. Monster, ________________. The monster cries again. At first glance, some similarities could be found with a horse. Thin, but strong forelegs that exist to charge over the earth. It is the same as a horse that has a trunk supported by its 4 legs, and a long tail swaying from behind. However, there was a human torso in the part where the horse's neck should normally be, leading to the head. The human torso has 2 more arms, in addition to the 4 legs. And there was no head above the neck of the human torso. As from the neck to the top, the horns were growing. The proof of the devil makes it easy to understand that it's different from other animals. The horns were growing in place of the head. It doesn't have a head. Speaking of where the mouth raised the cry, from the chest till the belly of the human torso was torn vertically, and in the oral cavity, the fully grown horizontally aligned fangs were ensuring their existence. Subaru, it's a monster. Even calling it a magical beast was sort of absurd, rather it was a profanity of life. To Subaru's knowledge, it was close to a fantasy creature called Centaur, a half-man and half-horse, but that was a distorted figure as if it had been thrown out of production halfway. And the Centaur, the mane of the flame was forming from the back human torso part, burning the sand cavity with incredible power, surging up the red light. If you look at the fire's strength, it's obvious that who created all the burned dead bodies lay around there. Using fire meant civilized people or whatever, was a mistake to embrace such expectations. The arms of the Centaur was the human arm itself with 5 fingers. The foot of the horse part of the Centaur was the legs of horse itself, which formed hoofs too. The figure was about 6 or 7 meters long, and it could be said that it was just the right size to walk in this hollow. That's, the lord of this cavity is in front of you. Subaru. It was a trap. Holding his breath, Subaru despairs. There was nothing he could do. He quickly turned his hand to the back of his waist and grabbed the handle of the whip, but he didn't think he could do anything with it. And to the breathless Subaru, the centaur tilts his eyeless head. Hearing it from its mouth, bathing in its roar, fueling his fears. For the moment, Subaru moved to create a gap. He turns around on the sand, roughly kicks one of the charcoal debris that hits the centaurs. The corpses that went through the fire were well burned and too light, and that there was no strength even if it hit. But still, it's good to be in control. Clinging to the steep slope, trying to return to the upper aisle. He would go back the road he came, but that didn't mind it. The problem was he didn't know how far this centaur was going to go. It's dubious how much appetite that thing had, as it burns its prey this way. Of course, as far as he heard that the demon beast had the nature to kill humans instinctively, though it does not always work according to that. Still, if it was possible to turn the situation a little. Subaru, Kafu. When he was thinking about it, Subaru noticed that his body was not trembling. Trying and create a diversion by kicking a charred debris, or climb the steep sand slope and turn back, or could reach out to the whip, Subaru could do none of this. Because before he could get to it, the breath of the monster burned Subaru. Subaru, ah. As soon as the conception reached that his whole body was being burned, Subaru screamed in pain and suffering. Perhaps because his throat was burned, his lungs were burned, as he could not raise a bit of his voice. When the burned skin formed bubbles, they swelled and burst instantly. The fluids that had flown inside the body, which had never been seen before, instantly evaporated, and the blood boils for real. Subaru. Never mind, rolling over on the ground in this suffering. The muscles and fat were burned to the ground, melted and lumbered. The pain faded far away, and Subaru experienced an illusion being drowned in flames. Burned and burned. He read somewhere about the depth of the burn. He heard that there were stages of the burn, and when it went to the third stage, the scars would remain, and the skin would have to be transplanted. He also heard that when a person burns 30% of the body's skin, that alone makes breathing difficult and leads to death. Subaru. Short hair burns till the roots, and the eardrum and brain matter melted and flowed out from the earlobe. The lips and gums evaporated and the teeth were peeled off, and the tongue was gulped by the suffering of the heat wave. It doesn't matter. He had already drowned. If it was burned, could it be healed? Even though he was not confident with his face, if it gets burned, will it give him some kind of fancy appearance? To Amelia, to Beatrice, to REM. Subaru. Burning, the field of vision was burning. Everything is burning, turning red and going white. Blood was eradicated by the tremendous heat, the eyelids melted away, the fluids of the eyeball evaporated, it turned white and cloudy, and nothing could be seen. He just heard something. He heard someone calling. He heard the baby crying. Someone came down beside him. Idiot. Why? I told you to run away. Why did you come down here? But he didn't know what it meant to go down. Moreover, what's left or right? A horse, a person. It melts and burns and sleepy. Melts and disappears. Ram, how long are you going to sleep? Get up, lazy Barusu. Subaru, gua. Subaru was pulled back to reality with a sharp poke, as his hands and feet were unable to move, and his scorched thoughts collapsed. Suddenly rising up his body, Subaru wipes cold sweat from his sand-laden forehead. Subaru, oh, what? Looking around. Dark, he couldn't see anything. There was something that evoked fear just a few seconds ago. Subaru, huh? Ram. I am stunned. How frightened are you in the darkness? You are not a child. Subaru, Unwillingly shivering his body, Subaru had his eyes open wide to her voice. In the light of the lantern, Ram spills a small sigh. Then, when she quietly kneeled down on the spot and stroked Subaru's cheeks with her hand. Ram, what a pitiful face. Subaru, has my face melted? Ram, except in front of Amelia-sama, I have never seen such a pitiful sight. The heat of the palm touching the cheek was so warm, but it does not get even close compared to what Subaru has just experienced. Thanks to that feeling, the flames and the other warmth, Subaru finally understood the situation. Again, he have returned by death and came back. And here is the another save point other than the two deaths that he met in the sand dunes. So it said, you can't challenge the labyrinth of the sand without risking your own life. He felt like the cold sand flowing on the sand sea silently mocking the scorched Subaru. End of chapters 12 and 13, The Watchtower's Baptism.